listening to a little bit of Sonny Clark's wonderful piano, echoing what we'll be doing in our last segment today, talking about Mr. Kelly. But we welcome to the Live from the Heartland table Odette Yousef, who is the North Side reporter for Chicago Public Radio, WBEZ. Welcome to Live from the Heartland. Such a pleasure to have you here. I think I want to start talking about the story you did yesterday, looking at this church in Lincoln Park that's trying to set up a sanctuary thing as a lead into, when you came to Chicago, did you think immigration would be your beat of your many other topics that you're interested in? Because you do a lot of immigration-related stories now.
I did, yeah. So, you know, we've got, my office is on Devon Avenue, sort of in the heart of the Indo-Pac commercial district. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I knew when I came that it would be a lot of cultural coverage, a lot of coverage of immigration issues. And the nice thing about the North Side, which you know well, is how diverse it is. You know, we've got South Asians, East Asians, Arabs, all kinds of people. So, I mean, the thing that's different is that now just having me report on immigration for the station is not enough. There's just been so much.
That's great. That's great.
So much is happening every day.
Are they hiring?
Yeah, I don't. Hopefully, they will be formally hiring.
Ignore that question. Ignore that question, Odette.
But yeah. So I knew that, but I never imagined that like it would be, you know, a beat that would be so just so busy that we would need more people on it.
So we have national leadership that's made this a major issue, but as you say, being housed for your work on Devon Avenue, we are, as classically labeled, in a blue state silo where I think the population basically understands how important immigrants and refugees have been to our region, to our economy, etc. What's it like to report out of a city like Chicago, because BEZ has a national presence, it's not just a local reporting kind of operation. What's it like to try to represent what we have going here, if I can put it that way, up against the backdrop of a country that's fearful of what immigrants have done for our country?
Well, I mean, I think what I try to do in my stories is show all the ways that people are responding to, people are affected by and responding to what's going on nationally. So, you know, we probably don't have the voices of people who reflect, you know, the approach of this administration may not be as vocal or as many in Chicago as they may be in other places. But we're seeing, you know, this really interesting campaign against so-called sanctuary cities, and that is a Chicago story. We're seeing, we saw those protests at O'Hare. You know, like Chicago in some ways is really kind of the epicenter of like where a lot of these kind of like legal issues are going to get played out.
Yes.
Yes. For better or for worse.
We're ready.
So I just think it's a very exciting time to be reporting on this.
A little bit more on immigration. What is your sense of people out on Devon Avenue, immigrants, their fear, whether they're documented or not? I heard a report on the Klonsky Brothers show, Hitting Left with the Klonsky Brothers, yesterday. They interviewed a guy who was talking about 26th Street and how that is a real important commercial center, probably second to Michigan Avenue, and that's you know, money spending has dropped down. There have been ICE agents involved. They think it was Chicago police cooperating. Your sense of the ICE situation, immigrants in general, and what's happening on Devon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because we have so many different immigrant communities in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so Little Village, like you said, you know, we're seeing a lot of people scared to just leave their homes. You know, I've spoken with families where they've told me that we try to minimize just leaving our house now. They've trained their kids to look out the window before answering the door. But then again, you know, when you've got like, so I don't know if you all recall, but a month or two ago, there was that A Day Without Immigrants protest, and the idea was that a lot of people just wouldn't show up for work on that day. And you know, I went to work on Devon, all businesses were open, and you know, it didn't seem to be resonating necessarily with that community the same way that it was perhaps in Little Village and so, or Pilsen. So I think that different communities may be feeling the impact differently. And I think, though, that in general, there has been a concern among all the immigrant groups that perhaps we're not welcome anymore.
That's huge, and that is a huge story of what's going on right now. Off of the gentleman being dragged off of a plane this week, we had demonstrations again at O'Hare from the Asian community, both documented and not, mostly totally legal, but basically saying what you're just mentioned, which is how welcome are we, period.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things about that is that, you know, as you know, immigrant communities have really started to been sort of under scrutiny for that question. You know, what is our place in the American society? How welcome are we? We're seeing sort of this interesting coalition emerge of immigrant communities with sort of like the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And, you know, speaking to some of the folks that organized that Asian American protest at O'Hare, you know, they were framing this as like this wasn't just about poor customer service on United Airlines. This is about how law enforcement treats Asian Americans, African Americans, all kinds of people. We need to start thinking about our relationship with law enforcement too, and we need to see that there are commonalities between how that goes in our community and how that goes within the Black community here.
Right.
You talked earlier about Chicago perhaps being an epicenter of some of the legal battles around the travel ban and associated issues. But we like to think Rogers Park has responded within the city of Chicago in a similar fashion. You attended recently a training that Protect RP had. I don't want you to give away what future stories you might be working on, but what was your impression as someone who knows something about this beat and some of the people in these impacted neighborhoods? What did you see that day?
So the training was fascinating. It was a day-long training. You know, we had about 60 people or so showed up at this, you know, location in Rogers Park at 10 a.m. on a Saturday.
Right.
And they stayed there until 3 p.m. And basically they were there to find out what they could do to slow down, get in the way of an ICE raid. And we're seeing, and interestingly, a lot of the people that were in attendance there are not Rogers Park residents. They were coming from Albany Park or, you know, other neighborhoods, because there are similar discussions going on in neighborhoods all over the city about what that can people do to minimize what ICE does in their neighborhoods.
Right.
And so, you know, there was discussion about what does direct action mean. They were contextualizing it by bringing up examples of the revolutionaries dumping tea in the Boston Harbor and Rosa Parks sitting at the front of the bus. I mean, it was interesting to see the context that they were giving for it. And then there was actual training on like, okay, you guys are going to we're going to pretend that this ICE raid is going on. We've got these police officers here, and you guys need to sort of document what's going on right now, and how do you deal with the possible intimidation that you might experience from police officers for doing that kind of thing. So it was fascinating, you know, to see how they're thinking about it, the roles that they're, you know, envisioning that people could play in these actions. And, you know, it's also interesting because the people organizing this are seasoned organizers. And so the way that they went about putting together this training was very methodical. Like, they studied hours of videos online of ICE conducting raids, and were trying to pinpoint, like, okay, that's how long this takes to do. This is where they go. You know, 2 of them go to the back door of the house, you know, X number go to the front door. What does that mean for how we, you know, approach this situation? So, you know, I found Rogers Park to be amazing, just in that, like, while a lot of neighborhoods are thinking about what to do, you know, these guys seem to really be approaching it in a methodical way.
Thank you for saying that. I love hearing that about our PRP folks, who, have always been more from the get, more than just Rogers Park, but also include, the Rogers Park organizations that signed on to it. Tom, in one of his first questions, asked you about when you arrived in Chicago, if you thought you'd be on this beat. Where did you arrive from?
So prior to this, I was a reporter at the Atlanta NPR affiliate for 3 years.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up?
The Boston area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
New England.
New England.
I'm also going to ask one of Tom's questions. Who's your most influential journalist mentor,
Oh gosh.
or a couple of them?
Yeah. Well, my editor right now, I think, Kate Cahan.
Woohoo!
she's
All
star.
right.
Yeah.
Finally got a Turkle Award.
Yeah, she just got a Turkle Award, which is so well deserved. Kate has, I've done all of these recent immigration stories under her guidance, and she understands the importance of these stories, and she encourages it, and she's just a pleasure to know and work with.
Sweet.
You're an East Coast gal. You did a lot of work in Atlanta before you came here. You have a very specific kind of neighborhood ethnic beat. Are we a little full of ourselves here in the Midwest in Chicago? Are we a little chauvinist about our town? How have you taken to Chicago after
I can't
being
believe
around
you
the
asked
rest?
that.
That's a strange one. Go for it.
I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of Chicago pride, but I come from Boston, which also has a lot of pride. So I've loved being here. I found the people to be very welcoming, and it's been a great opportunity to add some more stories to that mix. So, yeah.
If you had a chance to go off the immigration beat and do your own thing, what would be that next big story you'd want Kate to give you time to do?
This is my thing. This is what I want to be covering. I've been doing also I've been also doing a lot of reporting about homelessness
Yep.
on the north side and stuff like that. So that's been, but these are, in general, the stories that I do are things that I pitch, that I want to cover, and Kate rarely, if ever, says no.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Just finally, I think, before we bring in David Marienthal and Mr. Kelly's and all that era, in this time of Trump, news outlets have come under fire, and the whole question of fake news, etc. How do you, as a professional in the industry, let people know they can trust you?
I don't think that I've changed what I do. I think that we've always done fact-based reporting. I am really glad that there's a discussion about fake news now, because people who may not have been trained on how to spot fake news are now getting more educated about that. I think in some ways, like, maintaining balance, reporting about immigration issues in a city, like you said, Tom, like Chicago, which is overwhelmingly sort of pro-immigrant,
Yeah.
it presents some different challenges, but I don't think I've changed what I do.
Okay, Michael's got one more last
Yeah, it has
question.
to do with immigration.
So this will be the last question.
Yeah, okay. And I read this morning, I think that, Trump is still asking for 5,000 more agents on the border. They have a force of 19,000, which is 2,000 down from what Obama tried to get it to. They're having more people retire from the Border Patrol than are joining up. And I'm just wondering, at a time when actually the figures show more people going back to Mexico than coming across, what your sense of that is? Is that true? Is that happening?
That more people are
Yeah,
leaving.
and what you think the role of the, what's really happening down there with the growth of the Border Patrol, or this Trump actually wanting to increase the numbers?
Yeah, so as far as the number of Border Patrol agents, like I haven't, seen the recent hiring numbers or anything like that. So I don't know if that's really happening or not. From talking to, undocumented immigrants here, one thing they've told me is that while it's not totally clear that the number of deportations in the city of Chicago itself have increased, we don't know if it's really increased. The pressure that immigrants are under, the stress of having to worry about being detained every time they leave, itself may be what the administration is going for. Just making people decide that maybe it's not worth the stress of staying here, maybe they should just go back.
That's,
Go out to Canada.
Odette Yousef, thank you so much for joining us. Odette is the North Side reporter for WBEZ, Chicago Public Radio. Good luck in your future reporting. We always enjoy listening to you on the radio.
Thanks.